will lead us in the pledge.
Mr. Mayor, in the interest of separation of church and state, I respectfully decline.
Okay, you don't have a thought?
It
That
can
was
be a
my
prayer
thought.
or a
Well, that's your thought.
Oh,
Okay. Paul?
Okay.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. We'll begin tonight with a request from our fire department to introduce some new employees and administer the oath of the office for fire department employees.
Mayor, Council, thanks for giving me a little bit of time beginning your meeting. So we'd like to introduce some of our newest, somewhat new. It's been a few months since we've been able to get back up here, but have some new firefighters that we'd like to introduce you to. So the first one is firefighter paramedic Joel Cromer. He was hired full-time in May of 2022. However, he has been employed with Syracuse City as a part-time firefighter since June of 2018. He brings over 20 years of experience from Gold Cross Ambulance and Layton Fire Department. So saw the smile on your face on that one there. The next one is firefighter advanced EMT Tyler Fulmer. He was also hired full-time in May of 2022. He started his fire service career here with Syracuse when he was hired as a part-time firefighter in May of 2021. He also brings experience from Weber Fire District. So if you two come up, please. Tyler Fulmer, Joel Cromer, and we'll have Cassie swear them in.
So raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Tyler Fulmer,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of Utah,
and the Constitution of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties
and I will discharge the duties
of my office
with
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 fidelity.
fidelity. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, tonight our next item of business is public comment. Just to make everyone aware, there are no public hearings scheduled for this meeting. So if you have a comment on any of the items that we will be discussing tonight, now would be the appropriate time. You have 3 minutes. Please begin by stating your name and address so that we know where you're from. And the time is yours.
My name is Brant Thurgood. I live at 1024 West Grants Lane in Syracuse. As many of you know, or all of you know, tonight on the agenda is the land sales / transfer trade to Ivory Homes. And I just wanted to say, as many of you have heard many different comments about this for the last couple of months, and grateful it's coming to an end for a decision that's going to be made. I just wanted to say, number one, as you as city council members, you're stuck with a decision to make tonight that wasn't necessarily brought on by you. And I understand that that's a decision that's hard because you can't control that. And so number one, the Thurgood family, no matter what happens, we understand and respect that you as city council members have to make that decision, and that's up to you. And again, this is what government's about, and we know that you'll make a good decision, what's in best interest for your city. But as citizens who have lived in Syracuse since the creation of Syracuse, and as my grandma, who has lived here for 90 years of her life, out of her 101 years of her life, that grew up here, who put many lands and many families here, you know, when she was told about this property, about this park, she wanted to do what was best for her city and her legacy. And I asked that tonight, that you represent the integrity of the city at that time that was extended to her, that the park can remain the same, that with the land trade, that you're trading 2 acres for 1. So let's go ahead and keep the acreage, a bigger park. It's a win-win situation. And then at that time, we can support the citizens of Syracuse by having a fantastic park for people to recreate at. Thank you.
I'm Barbara Thurgood. I live at 1889 South, 910 West, Unit B, Syracuse, Utah. And I also just wanted to make one comment concerning the park that is going to be voted on tonight. I just wanted to let you know, as a council and as a mayor, that as quickly as a decision is made, if it is a park, that we will do everything in our power to have a citizens coalition to assist in developing that park, raising money for that park. This would have already been done if the park would have been needed. But now is the time it's going to be needed. Those 71 homes are coming. Now is the time to develop that park into a family wedding park, a show place for our city. This is needed. And we know this can be done. $500,000 was raised for the museum. And so we know how to do this, and it has been done. And all we ask is just for the opportunity to organize and to assist you in developing this park if that decision is made. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Julie Alta Thurgood Johnson. I live at 5196 North Highway 38 in Brigham City, technically Honeyville. You've all heard from me. I've all emailed all of you. I think how I feel about this is very clear. I think I'll go into the reason that I moved to Honeyville. And like I said last time, Syracuse is my forever home. I will be here forever eventually. This is it. And I hope that my future generations can come here and find a place that is open space. But the reason I moved to Honeyville was because I wanted more acreage. I have 16 acres currently, where I have horses and pigs and chickens and dogs and cats and children. And I wanted my kids to have that experience. So that's the only reason I left Syracuse, is so they could have open space. And the Davis County Fair that is now is not the fair that I grew up with, but my kids have all done pigs in Box Elder County Fair, and it's a wonderful experience to have open space. It's a wonderful experience to take care of another animal and to have that opportunity. And it was an experience my grandmother had given me growing up, because we grew up on my uncle's dairy. I have milked cows. I have shoveled poop. I have been peed on, sat on, you name it, by a cow. That happened. And I wanted that for my kids. So when Syracuse started to shift in a different direction, I moved north. But my love for this city is endless. And I am very proud to say that one day I'll be here forever. I want you and hope that you will look at this as though my grandmother was standing here in front of you and not me. Because if my grandma was still alive, which honestly, she easily could have been, although once she hit 100, I think she was done. She would have been 102 this year. And she wanted to leave behind something better and more. And I hope that you will all have the integrity to uphold your office and do what was asked of my grandmother years ago and uphold that promise to her. Because if it had been anything else, she wouldn't have sold it to the city. We're very capable of developing. 2 of my uncles are excavators. 2 of my other uncles were in construction. If we wanted to make it houses, it would have been houses. But that is not what my grandma wanted, nor is it the wish of our family. We want open space. Jensen Park is going to be under Legacy Highway soon. Then what? What open space will Syracuse have left then? Very little. So please have integrity and please uphold the decision and the promise that was given to my grandmother when this was all done, and don't make it about anything else. Thank you.
My name is Jerry Thurgood Waite. I live on 1037 Grants Lane, named after my father. Each one of you, when you ran for this city council, ran on a position. I read each one of them that you guys put out there. Want you to remember what you ran on, to serve the people. Not others that are coming in, but to serve the people. It's funny, I was talking to a person that's longtime city residents, said that she approached the other mayor and asked if they could build a house at the end of our street. His quote was, that land was bought with a special grant for a park, and you cannot break that grant. Wondering why we can break it now. What happened? Also, I heard something today. Ellis Ivory was giving an award for keeping the Heritage Park alive because the heritage of Utah is important. Our heritage is important, and that's what this park stands for. My grandfather's dairy farm is where the park is. My father farmed the farm that's there. And we ask that you guys consider this. When you think of this, you're serving the people of Syracuse, not other people that come in and wish to build and then leave. You are serving us. Please remember that. Remember the promises you made when you ran for this office. Thank you.
My name is Alan Thurgood. I live in 1889 South 910 West in Syracuse. I bet you'll be so glad when this is over. I bet you will. You know, I appreciate, I've had a phone call from every one of you except for one. You know, a phone call from each one of you calling and asking questions, expressing your opinion very, very sincerely. And I appreciate the effort that you put into this to try to understand the situation on both sides. I feel that you have done the very best you can to gather the information. You know, as you've called and visited, each one of you have done that and made that effort, and I appreciate that. I appreciate how difficult this decision is for you. And as you represent both what the city wants to do, the city people, and hopefully what the Thurgoods and the people around the park area would like to do. I guess it comes down to me to one point, that is the city integrity. You know, it's not legal. You know, there's no attorneys involved. It's not any of that stuff. That's not even part of it. The question is just the integrity of the city. The city bought some land, promised a little old lady that it'd be a park. She sold it for that purpose. And so it becomes an issue of integrity. Integrity and the ability to build a park that would be a showpiece for the city, not a sports park, not a soccer park, even though we probably need a dozen of those. We probably can use all the land, but what we need is as one of you called it, a wedding park, a place where your daughters could have a reception and feel proud to do it. Every Saturday we look out there and I watch the weddings, and I love to see the bishops and the ministers as perspiration rolls down their forehead as they go through that ceremony and try to do it. It's just sort of fun to watch them because I've been there to do that. But there are so many beautiful weddings that take place in the park as it is now, and it could be beautified and become a much better park than that. And so we would hope that you would give us a chance to have the city have a true wedding park, something equivalent to what Layton has or what Kaysville has or what American Fork has. You know, we're the type of city that deserves that, deserves a statement to be made. We're a great city. We're not just a mediocre city. And we have wonderful people moving into our city, and they need places where their families can gather and people can be together. And thank you for your consideration. I really appreciate all the effort that all of you have done. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Mayor, City Council, staff. My name is Chris Frazier of the 1475 South Ruby Way and have for 23 plus years. I'm here to talk to you about number 7 on your agenda tonight. The PDR on 3.5 acres on the west side of Banbury. I'd like to back up and make just a couple of points. That PDR was originally approved more than 5 years ago for the 10 acres across the street or the piece across the street. Why is it taking so long for this to move forward? Number one, the PDR on the south side of Antelope Drive is probably approved by both Planning Commission and City Council with very little impact or consideration for the PDR that was sitting idle for 5 years. Number one. Number two, no sign on that property. I've lived there 23 years. There's been no sign on that property saying it was for sale, for general commercial, or for lease for general commercial in 23 years. That property is master planned general commercial. Number 4, Mr. Craythorne wants to add a parking lot to the west side of Banbury on 3.5 acres. Donate that parking lot to the city. The city does not need another parking lot that it has to manage when that parking lot will be overflow for the PDR development on the east side of Banbury, pure and simple. If the city needs more parking for Founders Park, then I would suggest that it enhance the driveway into Founders Park and utilize Founders Park 100% of the time as it should be. The last point I'd like to make is the traffic on Banbury. If you guys are not aware, the intersection at 1700 South and Banbury Drive is a mess, and somebody is going to die in that intersection. City Council has approved a PDR across the street, which opened up a double lane wide right across from Banbury. That does not have a right turn in or a right turn out in it currently, which means you're going to have people making left turns out of there to go west on Antelope Drive. That's a mess. That is going to continue to be a mess. Now you want to add a parking lot and more traffic to Banbury. I have a background with the city. I spent time on the Planning Commission. I understand that Banbury was built as a collector. However, that collector does not stand in this case. When that intersection, when that road was designed as a collector, that was a 90-degree intersection there without a turn west of it. And that telephone pole and that little curve in Antelope Drive makes that a nasty intersection. We don't need another city parking lot in the city maintained by the city. I would suggest that the City Council look at other alternatives for that piece of property, and let's look at the general commercial that is needed. Thank you.
Hello, good to see you guys. Thank you for the job you do for us. I do get it's a tough job to do when you're trying to represent we the people, not the developers who come in. We want you watching our back. And I'm hearing a lot of really good comments tonight about some concerns, including the park. I've photographed many weddings there. Don't ruin it. Please don't ruin it. It's beautiful over there. I'm Christy Frazier, sorry, Chris's wife, 1475 South Ruby Way. I want to give you a picture of what it's like on Banbury Drive, especially when school is in. We get the AM traffic and then we get the PM traffic. I did stand out there on the corner a couple times and I counted the cars that come in out of our neighborhood to pick their kids up at the park. The average was 60 to 75 cars AM and PM. Weather's bad, it is worse. I worked at Syracuse Elementary for 21 years. I'm still with the school district. I already know that the apartments across from Antelope are feeding into our school. I already had a friend of mine tell me they are starting out with 27 kids in their class. That's at the beginning of the school year. That's a scary number. I know what it's like to try and manage a large class, and now we're going to feed it with more. Now, the other thing that I did want to bring up, now's the time to be proactive in the traffic. It is a nightmare. It is a nightmare to get out of Banbury. And it's not easy to just go on up this way and go clear up and around the other way to get out if I want to do a left-hand turn. The other day, I tried to do a left-hand turn at 12 o'clock when you think traffic would be a little calm. It wasn't. Now I'm dealing with the trucks who are working at the apartments, trying to get out and around them, and they're not even signaling. I have no clue what's going on. And then they're turning into it, and I'm thinking, oh, I can't make a left-hand turn. And now you've got them coming both ways. Be proactive. Do not use UDOT's business plan of when to react by the number of deaths and injuries that take place. We need to be proactive, guys. It's the safety of our citizens, safety of our children. We've got to think of that. And now we're giving away more commercial property. Who's going to start paying these taxes? We just hired some new firefighters. Thank heavens we're doing that. But our numbers are going up. The commercial property is disappearing and fast. I don't want my taxes to go up. The road out in front of my house already looks nasty because we aren't maintaining it. Just some things to think about. Traffic is a nightmare. Thank you again for all you do. We appreciate you.
Larry Shingleton, 1738 West Ira Way. Some of you know me and some of you don't. I've sat in those seats, so I know some of the heartfelt things that you go through. But you know, what's interesting is the city's changing, and some of it's not for the best. I live in the Banbury area, and trying to get in and out of that road is impossible. And you talk about traffic, you talk about gas, you talk about pollution, all of these things. Well, try sitting there for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes sometimes trying to get out of Banbury. When I was in those seats, the people spoke loud and clear that they didn't want some of the building that you have allowed. You have allowed. You're listening to people from outside of Syracuse, developers and so forth. You're ignoring what the people overall want. And it's not more traffic, more people. They want families living in their area who contribute to the joy and wonderfulness of Syracuse. And you folks are allowing things to come in that, frankly, overall, the people of Syracuse really aren't appreciative of. Thank you.
My name is Raymond Gumbrecht. I live at 1453 South Ruby Way. And I also have to put up with trying to get on to Banbury. The one thing I would suggest is that you get a high performance engine in your car if you plan on making that left in time. Because the cars coming towards you are going to be coming in at a rate of 50 miles an hour, not just 40 or 45. The other thing that I see is noise where I'm at. all of a sudden we have this new apartment complex coming in, and the noise is bouncing off that apartment complex and hitting my house and the neighbors around the area. Yet other people want to put in houses across on apartments across the street from that apartment or where those apartments are. It's a no-go because of the sound that's being developed and produced off of those walls. I don't know why they built the house so close to the sidewalks, but I do know one thing. I lived in North Layton, and I worked there at North Layton Junior High School. And in the morning times, when they'd shovel the wide sidewalks, the sidewalks would be covered completely up with snow. The curbs were completely covered. The sidewalk was completely covered. It didn't give the children any place to sleep, to walk. And so the custodians were overburdened and taxed with trying to get ice off their sidewalks. I see the same thing going to happen here, is that you're not going to be able to get the sidewalks clear. And anybody who thinks that they can on an icy day has another thing coming. You'll be having KSL News come and visit you, just like they did North Layton Junior High. The other thing is I'm concerned about is the amount of water off of our beautiful lake. Now we don't even get to see the beautiful lake because of these apartment complexes. A lot of people have liked seeing those mountains that were there. And I went out there just to see how the water is progressing. Right now, it's the lowest that's ever been since 1963. It's 4,000. It's 4.190, I think. Seriously, I really believe that there are no forms of boats or anything like that, because I see a meandering stream that's coming through that's maybe from the Jordan River. And I don't know how that's working with the birds.
Wrap up your thoughts. Your time is up.
Okay, thank you very much. But I just want to bring across the point that your water that you're coming away with is virtually coming nil. People are having to do without receiving citations because they're overwatering. Well, watch the future, because that's what's going to be continuing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Josh Beams. I'm at 1014 Grants Lane. Going back to the park, I've only lived in one of those duplexes for about 4 months or 4 years. And I do know this area very well. I went to Bluff Ridge when I was, knee high to a grasshopper. I know this area since I was little, and I love what it's turned into in so many ways. The park behind my apartment is gorgeous. Every night when we get out of the car after going somewhere, my wife mentions how much she loves hearing the frogs just, croaking away. Every summer we get to see the little ducklings just waddling by. And it is an amazing experience just to even be this close to a park. And when we first heard that there were plans to extend that park, we were through the roof with excitement. And knowing that how close that is being taken away, it scared us. We're currently expecting our first, and we're so excited to have her. And I know I want her to grow up in a world where, yes, there's places to live, but that there's places to play. There's places to see the beauty of the earth, to see what we can come up with as a society and help beautify our city. I've only lived in Syracuse for 4 years, but I feel like it's been a second home for me for the past 15. I went to Syracuse High, I went to Syracuse Junior. This is my home. And I only ask, please continue to beautify it. Please continue to make it look amazing. There are plenty of places for our other houses. There's plenty of places to relocate where what would be 5 houses or 3 houses and just extend out the park. Please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alicia Gurney. I live at 1557 West, 1390 South in Syracuse. I also wanted to talk about number 7 on the agenda. I echo the other comments that were made about the safety issues. I have 4 kids, 3 of which are young adult and teenage drivers, with another one upcoming. Every time they leave the house, I hear sirens out on Antelope, and I'm always wondering if it's one of my own. And because I know that there's no plans for a light right now, and that petrifies me. I don't want to get that call that one of my kids has been killed. Concerned about the overcrowding with the townhomes that are going to be developed with all this kids coming into the schools. Also the safety of the kids crossing. It's just going to be too much. And as it is, the drivers are going too fast. No one slows down. A lot of people don't stop at the stop signs as it is. Also with the inflation rates, supply chain issues, and impending recession, is it the right time to bring more residents seeking jobs, as well as increasing the cost to residents to pay for the additional infrastructure requirements, our cops and firemen? I'm grateful that we have some more firemen tonight. That was a good step forward. I am concerned about the cops. In the last meeting, I mentioned that we had a party house behind us, and when I called the cops for help, they couldn't show up because there was no one there to help. So when we have another 112 townhomes or whatever coming in, who's going to come and help when we don't even really have it right now? That's a big concern for me. And then also the parking lot. That parking lot by the skate park is always empty, always. And we just had Heritage Days or Syracuse Days, and they didn't even have the carnival this time. And there was a lot of room parking for over there. And then our greatest resource, our water, we're already lacking so much of it, and we're wanting to build more homes or townhomes, and we're already stretched thin. So if you just think about these things and the safety of our kids, that definitely is my number one, with no thought to crossing Banbury and out onto Antelope. Thank you.
My name is Robin Gumbrecht, 1453 South Ruby Way. And my real big concern is watching all those apartments being built when we're in a drought right now anyhow. And I can't imagine what anyone was thinking when that was considered, and we didn't have any idea. I'm very concerned about our water, and I hope you guys think about that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Mary Carver. I live at 1588 West, 1500 South, and I've lived here for 23 plus years also. And this growth in Syracuse is, my opinion, has got to slow down. Like everybody else has said, we're limited on our water. So you add more for them to limit to water their yards. That takes more from us. And it's just plain ridiculous. Syracuse is nothing like it used to be. I've lived here my whole life. And this used to be quiet little Syracuse. It's not quiet little Syracuse anymore. When you can't even get police to come to a house that's having a party to help control it, is not a small town. And I think we need to forego the big townhomes. And if I think start building littler homes, smaller homes for these young kids that are trying to get into homes that cannot get into homes now because they're too much money. And that's all I have to say.
Last call. Okay, I'll close public comment. Thank you for those who shared.
Mayor, we did have emailed public comments.
Okay.
Okay, the first comment says, Dear City Council, below find my concerns about the property being developed on Antelope and Banbury. Increase in traffic onto Banbury Drive. It is already hard enough to get out onto Antelope. Safety is a huge issue here. The streets in the subdivision plan are very narrow and will not allow for any on-street parking. Therefore, this will cause cars to be parked out on Banbury Drive. Picture Heritage Days. 3, the donation of the smaller lot to the west side of Banbury to be a parking lot will actually be an overflow parking area for the new subdivision. But because it is donated, the city will be in charge of its upkeep, using our tax dollars to do this. There is plenty of parking in the park, which only fills up after 8 p.m. the night of the fireworks. Several of us took note on this. The apartments going in across the street on Antelope is in the boundaries for Syracuse Elementary, junior high, and high school. Adding 112 townhomes into this will increase the student population. Did I mention the traffic on Banbury? I hope this helps. Please, please. Okay, and the second one says, to whom it may concern, I'm very concerned about the PRD proposal of townhomes on Banbury. This is way too many homes for only 6 acres of land. I was so excited to move to Syracuse a few years ago because I was extremely impressed with how well taken care of the yards were, and that Syracuse did not allow second buildings of sheds, garages to be bigger and taller than the existing homes. Sad to look around after 12 years to see how quickly Syracuse is going downhill. Many homeowners have let their yards go, and surrounding areas are not adding beauty and value to the community. This development off of Banbury causes many concerns. Parking issues. This will add 180 cars to this area, which is already quite congested and unsafe with school and park. To have the homeowners merging onto Banbury after a 4-way stop causes many issues, not to mention the proposal of having 2 different outlets coming from the east and west to merge onto Banbury and then on Antelope is concerning and will cause many accidents. Not to mention with the development on Antelope with an apartment complex right across the intersection to merge onto Antelope with no streetlight is going to be quite the traffic hazard, which will result in many accidents. This will already increase our population with schools, traffic, and water, whether it be culinary or secondary, is very concerning. We are already in an extreme drought. Syracuse City is already stretched to the limits with water concerns, lacking resources for fire and rescue, police to facilitate all of this growth in the community. I'm asking the city of Syracuse to really rethink the landowner's proposal for the development, come up with a different plan that brings affordable housing to the community and doesn't create traffic hazards and cause us to have permanent water restrictions. On 6 acres of land, there should only be 20 to 25 homes in that area, not 99 townhomes that will create many safety concerns as a community and not have adequate parking for the townhomes going into that subdivision. Please really look at the concerns for our community before casting your vote on this proposal on Banbury. Thanks for your service. There's one more. It says we are writing to publicly express our concern for the proposed rezoning of the frontage along Antelope Drive to PRD to allow increased density and number townhomes in the property at the corner of Antelope and Banbury. We have several concerns with this proposed townhome development. First and foremost is safety. Traffic is already a problem along Banbury Drive, and this high density housing will only increase this problem. There are regularly accidents at that intersection. The apartments along that area of Antelope that are currently under construction will add to the traffic concerns. Any additional townhome development in this area at this time appears unwise. Another concern is the loss of desperately needed commercial space along Antelope Drive. At a recent city council meeting, the developer was denied rezoning of the area on the west side of Banbury for additional townhomes, largely due to the viability of that space as commercial property. Now the developer is proposing a parking lot in this area with rezoning of the property along Antelope Drive as PRD with the associated high density housing. The commercial area is so desperately needed in our area, far more than these additional high-density units, as so many are already currently being built. It is also important to note that there is plenty of parking at the skate park the majority of the time. It only fills up on rare, busy city events such as Heritage Days. Even on the night of the fireworks, there was still empty parking after 8 p.m. Additional concerns include our limited water resources and public safety officers, such as police officers, firemen, and other emergency services. The pace of the approval of new development has been so fast lately. Please slow this down and put a pause on this development. Please give a chance to see how much the developments that are currently being built affect traffic, water, and our other precious resources. Please give a chance for commercial real estate to be built, as was given for one of the reasons to build some of these other developments to attract businesses. Please allow Syracuse to continue to be a wonderful place to live. That's all.
Okay. We are now leaving public comment. Item number 4, we have 4 items of minutes to approve. Any discussion on those? I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and seconded. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We have 2 items of common consent. Proposed resolution R22-28 authorizing the mayor to execute interlocal agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation and West Point City for corridor preservation. Also, appointments to the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustments, and the Disaster Preparedness Committee.
I think it's an architectural review board, not the Board of Adjustment.
Oh, sorry. I should know that. Okay, corrected, the Architectural Review Board appointment. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion that we approve those items listed on the common consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 6, consideration of possible vote to add a 3rd at-large seat to the Disaster Preparedness Committee. This is actually an item I added. We have set up our Disaster Preparedness Board to represent 5 districts that represent districts already created by the Ecclesiastical Authority in the city.
And FEMA actually uses those same.
And FEMA actually uses those same boundaries. So, and then 2 at-large seats. The districts is set up have been kind of hit and miss. I mean, even the district I live in, I've been trying for 6 months to get their representative named, and they have not got one. So in light of that, I had some great applicants for this position, and I would like to consider maybe adding a 3rd at-large seat, as our at-large people have done a lot of work on these committees.
Bring the total on the committee to 8.
Yes.
I support this decision.
Okay.
Being in those meetings with them and Jordan before myself, it's sometimes it's very hard to get some of those folks there. So an extra large person to help help with the footwork and stuff makes a real lot of sense.
Okay.
I agree. So the one question I have, and I agree, I think everything sounds
Okay.
right. And I obviously haven't attended any emergency preparedness meetings, as they haven't been my assignment. Was just, is there any voting efforts or anything that, having an even number would cause any kind of, or how does that play out in there?
We have an even number on the sewer board, and yeah, I mean, could be a possible 4-4 split, but it's never happened. So, I mean,
But it could.
it could, and that is a consideration. And if you, yeah,
That's the only thing that I was thinking as far as like ending up with 8.
I thought of it myself, but
We can make it to where one's not a voting member. It's like a at-large without voting.
Or
I'm not a
add,
voting member sitting on the board.
well, most of the votes usually end up unanimous. So I don't know that.
I didn't hear you said, I'm sorry.
I said most end up unanimous on
Yeah, they really do.
when I look at those.
But still, I mean.
Are they more,
It's happening.
yeah. Okay.
Jordan,
I would
do you
think-
have a vote? You're on there right now,
Actually,
right?
No, it's
No, I
actually.
am.
Oh, Jen is, that's right.
No, I don't have a
She
vote.
does not.
Switched.
So
You
the
don't
city
have a vote.
I bring
council
food.
does not vote on any of our advisory boards.
So would it be better to add an extra or remove one's voting ability, and maybe in case of,
I mean, if you add an extra without a voting capability, you still get all the help and without the issue of maybe coming into.
I
a
think-
tie.
I think you're going to have mostly consensus on a board like this. And so I don't think you're going to run into many situations where it's a 4-4 split.
The other thing is we never had 100% attendance.
So that gives us a good way to get a quorum.
The nice part is on this committee is this is really a planning committee, and this comes down to many hands make light work.
Yeah.
It's not a policy setting.
I think adding an additional member to help lift the load, especially around our mock disasters and some of those other things we do, I think it can only help the city to have additional members on the disaster preparedness committee.
You guys have way more experience with it than I would. That's the only thing that stuck out to me. So I'm supportive of it. If it makes
I'll take a motion.
Mayor. So I think at this point, sorry,
Go ahead.
was I going to say what I was going to say?
Okay, go ahead then.
No, you got it.
You can't vote yet.
So, yeah, so this would require a change to the ordinance. And so we would take direction tonight and then we could
Okay.
put it on consent agenda at the next meeting.
All right.
Was that what you?
That's what I was going to
Okay.
say.
Okay, so at this point, I will take the advice that we will put this on the next agenda for voting if I have everyone's support.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
You'll have to also update their bylaws, because I think the bylaws also identify the numbers and.
Okay, moving on to item number 7. Proposed ordinance 2022-15, amending Syracuse City zoning map for property located approximately 1700 South in Banbury, agriculture A1, planned residential development, and general commercial. I see Mr. Steele is online. Did you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let me first just clarify that there's been some question as to what we're voting on tonight. This zoning was approved some 5 years ago for the bulk of the area. It was brought up in public comment that no action has been taken. No permit's been filed. So, I mean, the city only acts on applications to do something. So, but the zoning was updated already. So this only is dealing with the commercial property that would be along Antelope and the proposed side property that would be west of Banbury. Those are the only parts of this that are in question tonight. Just wanted to clarify that. And Noah, you're welcome to make your comments before we start discussion.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, I have to join you guys remotely tonight, but hopefully you can hear me okay. I've shared the screen for the zoning map. The mayor's right, what he's explaining. So hopefully you can see my mouse as well. So we're just talking about the commercial area along Antelope. And last time we had some discussion and there was a little bit of question about what kind of commercial could fit in there. And so I added some additional research in the packet. Hopefully you saw it.
Would you actually mind going through it in the meeting? Just
sure
items. I'd appreciate that just because it was very educational. I learned a lot from it.
Yeah, a lot of times it's about depth and the scale of development. So I went through and just measured the general dimensions of the commercial area. It's about 431 feet by, what did I say it was? 138 feet deep. So if you look at, after you look at all the drive aisles and the parking and everything that's required for some of these things, beans and brew or standard fast food most likely wouldn't fit on there. And if they did, they would be reduced parking and landscaping. So Walgreens, something like that wouldn't fit. What would fit would be kind of like a coffee shop, like the Daily Rise that you see on Antelope, or a 7-Eleven if it didn't have gas. When you have gas, then that adds a lot of size to it. Also, there could be some sort of like office complex, dentist office kind of stuff that would fit. So I think that given the frontage on Antelope, there's definitely commercial viability, but maybe not quite what we had in mind as far as commercial viability. This is a very rough sketch, but you can see the challenges with the site. One is access. You're going to be dealing with a shared access situation because UDOT won't allow a lot of driveways just backing out into the road. And then the other thing is in the realm of, as you travel along the highway, most of the commercial is going to be located mostly along the corners, the hard corners. So 1000, 2000. This is what you'd consider to be a mid-block location. So that's why I think maybe, and this is just evaluating as a guesstimate. So, and then I also went through the numbers as far as the impact. And so in the dotted line, you could see there's 24 townhome units. And these are rough numbers, but roughly it would be 3,600. Since they're primary residences, the valuation is actually less because people are living there. And then you'd have 72 new residents. And of course, there'd be property tax generated from that. And then because the population growth, we actually get a appropriation of sales tax from the population. Yeah, the new people would go and shop at places, and that might generate some point of sale, but that's negligible. Mostly from the population count, we get a lot of sales tax. And then the traffic, of course, they would add traffic, approximately 7.32 trips. This is according to a traffic engineer manual. That's kind of a standard way of estimating traffic impacts. So the next scenario, or the other scenario that would be commercial, the traffic is higher and the property tax is actually lower if it were to be built out like this. And like I said, this is a guess, but most likely scenario though, if you compare the two, you can see here that the townhome, I mean, this is just dollars and cents. We have to take into account more than just that. But as far as property tax, sales tax, and traffic, the townhome option is more advantageous for the city.
Okay, I'll open it up for council discussion.
Can you also talk to the viability of mid-block? I know you mentioned that briefly. How likely would we be able to get tenants into these locations with the mid-block location?
Here, let me show you this is our general plan map.
Sure.
And this might kind of inform us of where we anticipate there might be some commercial viability. So anytime you're along a major arterial and near the corner, and at one time we had commercial all along there's the general plan, and eventually maybe we would have got it, but the general plan committee looked at the entire city and strategically kind of located a spot where they thought maybe some higher density residential, if it has to go somewhere, could be good right there because there's bus service. The traffic would flow onto a state highway, and they're near two grocery stores. And so, depending on which direction you go, we could get some sales tax and things like that. And the services are all right there. But yeah, generally speaking, the things that drive commercial development are visibility and access. So being along Antelope, you have really good visibility, but the access being, away from a light that's gonna control the traffic in and out of there is a little bit challenging. But yeah, generally speaking, if you look kind of mid-block, the viability is just a little bit less. If you look at Smith's, you look at Walmart, you look at Smith's Marketplace, those are all on the hard corners.
Can you give me an idea of what we're looking for or at for a timeline of any lights along there?
So UDOT, as far as I understand, we have a light on 2000, and we have a light at the half mile, 1475, and then we have a light at 1000, and that's all we're going to get. And in the future. I haven't heard anything else from UDOT. UDOT is going to, as you go down Antelope, there'll be a light at 2500. And then of course there'll be West Davis corridor. And so that's gonna, that we anticipate that that's gonna change the flow of traffic. Instead of going east to get on the freeway, people are gonna be going west to go and get on the freeway. I think with all of the growth, traffic is gonna maintain steady and grow either way, but the flow of things might change a little bit. But I know that people have wanted to see a light on Banbury, but from what I understand with UDOT and their road classification standards, that the Banbury is too close to have another light.
Yeah, this has come up with UDOT's conversations, and according to what they've told us, that will only.
Yeah, that's what we hear. I mean, I've seen lights closer, like look at Riverdale Road, sometimes I'm sure that it could be warranted if eventually traffic numbers reach that point.
What is the expected reduction in traffic along Antelope? If everything stayed static and the freeway comes in, what would that reduction look like? I've heard some numbers. I think it's between 10 and 20, but I can't remember. 10 and 20% reduction.
Yeah, this question came up in Planning Commission, and our city engineer looked into the West Davis Corridor EIS, and they have those traffic modeling numbers. I don't want to put Robert on the spot. I don't know if he knows it off the top of his head. I don't know. I don't remember what the traffic counts were, but I do know that they're anticipated to, at first, once they open the freeway, to actually go down a little bit. There's kind of like a tipping point where people will either still go east to get on I-15 or go west to get on West Davis corridor. But at this point, yeah, I think it should relieve some of that traffic of people wanting to go east. They'll try to funnel onto West Davis corridor.
I think to be fair,
traffic off Antelope.
It does, but I know, for example, with me, I plan on making a lot of turns going west rather than east once that traffic opens, just because a lot of people work in Salt Lake, and that's a really close freeway entrance.
So, Noah, I gotta point out your scenario comparison after we've had a couple different conversations about different topics. I like this, wherever you are in the sky. I like this. This is good. We're talking about putting businesses there that, let's be honest, they're likely not going to succeed just because of where that location is. And we're talking about the townhouses, commercial properties. So going in and out of there, if it feels like it's already hard enough for residents who are going through their daily and already aware that they need to take precautions, and I'm not saying they should have to, nobody should have to take precautions coming out of the driveway, but we all do it anyway. Because other drivers aren't that great at paying attention driving under. So we now want to put businesses in there that it says, hey, this is horrible to drive in and out of, but there might be a business right over there, just a little bit over, that's easier to get in and out of that you can go to instead. I feel like no matter what, we're already condemning these businesses for failure, unless they're like he said, like kind of like a doctor's office. But I like to point out, we did have just a coffee shop, Futures, not even a mile down the road, closed down because they're kind of in a similar situation and location, and they were not patroned.
And a mile up the road is South Fork Hardware.
And a mile down the road is South.
So South Fork Hardware, I think, had a huge rent increase, but we're so in this development, we're only talking about this frontage. So these other 90 some odd townhomes
Right,
are
they're already
there.
approved.
We've got another 200 and whatever across the street, plus we've got another 300 up the street. So that's a huge difference between like a Futures Coffee. Where are we going to provide services for all these high density projects that are going in? I'm thinking like if you look to like State Street in Clearfield, all along Main Street in Layton, you've got small retail spaces with small restaurants and things like that. I think stuff like that would be very viable with. No, it's
the same.
About the same.
Main Street's the same as Antelope?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my point. I'm hesitant to give up any commercial. I think it's viable. I think you can have small retail or even where are our citizens going to go for services, for restaurants, for things like that, if we continually give away our general commercial?
Well, I think we've already stated though that it's not large enough for a restaurant, but I'm looking at
No,
the traffic.
Look at like Little Caesars, that little strip, Little Caesars in Clearfield on State Street, like stuff like that. I think it's very viable. It's big enough for that.
Well, according to what Noah has provided, there's,
One at a time, please, for the record.
so back to a concern that several of our citizens have raised is the trips in and out. And we can see, even though we may not realize this, but the studies show traffic is 34 per 1,000 square feet as opposed to 7 per unit. So, I mean, you're looking at 3 times the traffic coming in and
traffic
out,
has different
commercial.
patterns than resident. They're
It's
gonna
still
use
coming
the-
in and out, right? Isn't that our issue, the coming in and out of the neighborhood and driving down
well,
that
they're gonna be
street?
on that frontage, so I
Yeah,
don't.
They have
I'm
to
not a
come-
traffic engineer, but there's more detail that you could get into. There's peak AM and peak PM. I just did daily traffic. So, depending on the business, you'll have daytime traffic versus all the time traffic, so the different uses do generate different types of traffic, and you can see here the Beans and Brew building, that's a multi-tenant building. It has Mr. Delicious and Beans and Brew, and then parking in a drive aisle. And you can see you could probably fit it on there, but you're going to be sacrificing some landscaping and some aesthetic quality of it.
Think of it. I'm not talking about a Beans and Brew type.
Well, like a Little Caesars would locate in a similar multi-tenant retail building is what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's just an example
Okay.
of a retail strip.
I forgot my question. I'll think of it again. Hold on.
Okay. Paul, while she's thinking.
No, I was just saying a retail strip, and Little Caesars was just an example. I'm not saying we need 20 Little Caesars, but I'm specifically pointing to a small retail strip that would use a similar depth to this lot that would be viable. I'm just
Okay.
saying there's viable commercial solutions.
Okay, so the
Jen?
other option this is townhouses where the parking lot would be, correct? Was that?
No, that's not on the table right
Well,
now.
I understand that, but if we don't approve this, that was what was presented first.
No, that was,
Before this.
yeah, but where the parking lot is not on the table that's a different
Okay, so
application.
down here.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, this is a rezone and preliminary plat. So we are actually looking at the entire design for compliance with our ordinance.
But
The parking lot is a permitted use in either of the zones. So I guess it's, but it's all part of the proposed development that we'd be looking at right now. So if we have a problem with the parking lot, now would be the time to bring that up.
Can you tell me where we stand with using CVS's parking lot?
CVS parking lot is privately owned.
So I know that they have had an issue with us using it for some events since they built theirs. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can't park in CVS parking lot because it's privately owned. When they created that subdivision, we retained a cross-access easement so you can get back to the park. And then I believe that I did talk them into giving us a few stalls. I think they're on the north end. There's like 9 stalls that they granted, but their total parking lot was like, I want to say 30 stalls or something. So for the most part, the majority of their parking lot is not open to the city and parking on. And then of course Maverick will build theirs, and I'm sure they'll be protective of our parking too.
I agree with some of the citizen comments that were read in, that parking lot is largely going to be used as overflow for this development.
Okay.
Could be.
That's another complaint that all these cars are gonna end up lining the road.
So-
You gotta pick the lesser of two evils.
But then that's a city maintained parking lot that's going to be to the benefit of this development only.
Well, I would like some clarification, Mr. Mayor, just in regards to the parking lot. Who's maintaining it? Just for the record, again, I think we're maybe somewhat clear, but it's been stated in different ways.
So my understanding is that the parking lot will be built by the developer. The developer will maintain an access easement so that it could be used by his residents. When it was suggested that the city would maintain it for the best use of Founders Park, we don't maintain anything that we don't own. So it would be donated with rights remaining towards those people to be able to use.
And then in regards to future, here we go. We've got it up here. Thank you, Noah. So in regards to the future potential commercial development to the south of it,
right?
How does that
So
interact?
that would also be reserve the right for a business that would go in on the corner to overflow to that parking lot. And we have done that in other places in the city where parking is considered somewhat shared.
Yeah, the parking is, you basically have three entities that could access the parking. It could be overflow for some of their residents. It could be used by people going to the park, and it could also set up some parking for some sort of medical office or retail or something on that corner to the south of it.
Will there still be access for the existing office space to the west? Is that also in discussion?
Yeah, we've had discussions with the landowner. They have a dumpster in the way right now. Sorry, I keep having to kind of zoom in and out of these different. I'll show you the way they've designed it right now. If he were to just move his dumpster, that could actually connect in with Peck's property, and then eventually would also connect through to the future office development and into Maverick and then into CVS. And so you could have some cross access through there.
Okay.
So I think we have to recognize that anytime there is a public parking, which would be the city's access use, it pretty much is unpoliced for use for similar places around the area. That's all legal. It's just a matter of, it's there. It comes to a mutual benefit. The city has benefit from that, and so have local businesses. And as long as all parties are in agreement, then that's, just everybody is a win-win.
Are there, maybe Noah can speak to this. You had mentioned kind of the cross access through Peck if he moves his dumpster and kind of down the line. Are those easements in place, or is that just future speculation?
Well, all we have control of, the applicant just can control what he has right now. So he's willing to grant that all the way up to the property boundary. And we have had a meeting with Peck to talk about it, and verbally he's in favor of that, but there's no legal.
So it's speculative at this point.
It could, yeah. Yeah, technically, yeah.
Okay, that was my question.
Can we discuss the water issue? I know that that's a concern of a lot of residents, and I'd like to, I don't know if Robert is able. You can. You're always on target here. Can you give us a little insight?
You may need to be more specific. Water in general.
There we go.
Specific to this area, this zone, what would the impact be? Townhomes versus commercial? What are their rights? What's their access, and what's their use in?
And you're talking just about that commercial.
Just this swath that we're talking about.
So I know that our ordinance says for residential, it is 3 acre-feet per acre that is required. So it's 36 inches of water over a full annual season. That is the standard now. That could potentially change in the future, but that's today's standard in our region of the state. So that is what we require for residential. For commercial, we require 4 acre-feet per acre of landscaped area. Reason is because landscaped areas are much smaller for commercial since they have a lot of rooftops and parking lots. So typically they have less water requirement because their demand is less. So that is what our ordinance states. Now, as far as concerns for water that a lot of the residents have, this is probably going beyond what you're questioning. no new development will change what Mother Nature provides us with water. I mean, that, right? We manage the water that is available.
So would you say that there is a greater impact with 24 units? Is that what we're looking at here? Sorry, trying to count.
I mean, it's
How many were
generally
there?
24, but there's some half
Culinary
units.
versus.
Culinary versus
Secondary.
not, yeah, I'm not so concerned about secondary because we know that we've made great strides in our ordinance changes. So how's culinary?
I apologize.
Oh, I should have been clear.
Yeah, so 24 units would be 24 individual meters and probably individual services to each one of those. I imagine those are individual units, I suppose. So that would be individual water services versus commercial. And I don't know what.
I mean, that's kind of hard, right? With regards to.
Yeah, I don't know
if it's a
what
car wash, we can say
potentially.
something totally different. If it's.
Yeah, if it's.
Yeah, it would depend
There are
on what's
different
going
water
in there.
demands for.
And if it's a restaurant, it'll increase.
We know that parking lots don't use water. So
Right, so it would
that
just
would be a less user than.
I think that's
Yeah.
a hard question to answer.
How many ever services you have? You probably have fewer services for commercial, but depending on the water use, you know, it may be equal, it may be less. I don't know. It's hard to say without knowing what
What we're talking
commercial could be in there.
Okay.
I do have traffic data that I pulled up while I was out there waiting. Well, not waiting, but I figured, you know, if I could help you out a little bit. So the Wasatch Front Regional Council has some really, really great data that's available to the public. And they have traffic data they've kept from historic data. I'm sure they can go back even farther than what they show, but they have a 2019 data for along Antelope Drive is showing annual average daily traffic at 27,184 vehicles in a day. That is a lot. The 2024 forecast is their next forecast up, and that actually goes down slightly at 26,000. I'm not sure the reason. I didn't read into it. I imagine maybe because traffic is divided once the highway comes in. But the 2030 forecast actually brings it back up to 27,500. So that's the data that they are showing.
So council, we've had a lot of discussion. I'll take a motion if anybody's come to a conclusion. Or if you'd like to talk amongst yourselves further, that's fine too.
As I look through this, traffic, I absolutely share the residents' concern that this will add the additional traffic, but I do know that there is at least a slight reduction coming. Like I said, I plan on making a lot of making a lot of turns going west once that freeway opens, and I know a lot of my neighbors will as well. So I don't plan on driving up to Clearfield very often anymore. So I take that into account. When it comes to water, to me, unfortunately, an argument for water is an argument against low density. The watering numbers, now I'm going to ignore culinary versus secondary just for a moment. One time watering a 1/4 acre lot can give 2 to 3 families water for a whole month. And that's assuming that families only using about 4,000 to 5,000 gallons of water. And based on a 1/4 acre lot, we actually use 4,000 gallons of water to water your yard once. But I do realize I'm ignoring culinary versus secondary. So there is that. As far as commercial, I look at the analysis. Mid-block commercial historically does not do well. These lots won't support a drive-through, which would do well if you can get to it. But it's even too small for that. I actually wish that 5 years ago, the city council had not approved a PRD in this area at all and left this all commercial. Unfortunately, I don't get that option. And no one on this council was on the council at that time. So we're kind of stuck with the hand we're dealt. In this case, With commercial not being viable, if we're looking at water, this uses less water than just single family homes going in here. And rezoning it all commercial is not really an option because the developer is not asking for that. I personally, with the hand I'm given, I don't see a way out of this. And so given that I do know that there will be some traffic reduction, but agree, 10 years from now, it'll be right back to where it is right now. The only thing I motion, I wish I could motion to do nothing.
You wish.
But we do have to act on applications.
We do. And so given that all this is about is the commercial and the viability of the commercial, I motion to approve.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries 4-1. Okay, on to item number 8. Proposed ordinance 2022-16, amending the Syracuse City zoning map for property located at approximately 1100 South, 1675 West, from R2 to R3 residential. This is the application that needs a variance or just a change so that they could do an accessory dwelling or within.
Yes, that's accurate. They want to build stairs, but building the stairs would encroach into their required rear setback. So we figured this might be the kind of an easy temporary fix to allow this resident to do what he needs to do.
I feel like
Okay.
it's still sick to my stomach about him paying that much for some stairs.
But I think this is
Okay.
in my opinion, it's a no-brainer
Yeah,
solution.
you're
He's
right.
bordered by R3. He's surrounded by R3. Technically, you could probably rezone all of that R3, but just for ease of this application, I would be in favor of it.
Yeah, we
Can-
discussed this as an option to reduce time for him and to allow
Right.
him
Yeah.
for this
Yeah.
silly ordinance.
And when do we have this on agenda for future discussion to remove this limitation so that we don't have
We
to?
do not
Yes,
at
they're not
this
doing-
time.
Should put it on there, 'cause this is.
But we
nuts.
can.
There's some stairs
So I will
in my
mo-
house.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion or a note that we add to a future agenda.
Yeah, so we're not having to rezone one house.
This is not a great way to
Fix this problem, but it's.
to fix this.
But it doesn't
Okay.
create the island that we.
Note made, but we can
Okay.
only deal with what's on the agenda tonight.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and seconded multiple times. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 9, proposed ordinance 2022-17, amending section 10.30.020 F1 municipal code related to accessory building encroachment in front yards of cul-de-sac. This we've talked about multiple times. This is someone who has an unusual shaped lot and is looking for less of a front easement so that he could add property to his side yard that would normally go in the back, but he has no backyard. So Noah, any other clarifications of the question?
No, you summed it up well. What you see on the screen is the black text is existing ordinance and the red would be the proposed amendment that would kind of create an exception or I guess an added encroachment allowance if you're at the end of a cul-de-sac.
Noah, this would be, just for context, this would fit in any zone that a cul-de-sac is found in, not
Mhm.
just R1 where
That's
we're.
correct.
Okay. I just-
Yeah, and if you look at the permitted uses in each zone, not all zones allow an accessory structure. So like, the MXD, I don't believe allows accessory
Right.
structures.
And that makes sense.
So my only concern with this is we've got a single application for this type of situation. Do we understand the implications of changing the zone rather than taking the planning commission's recommendation of having this individual apply for a variance?
So my understanding is that, and we talked about this being the easier of the solutions, because if we went through the route of the variance, we'd have to establish that there was some kind of hardship, which in this case may or may not fly. But anybody who's in a cul-de-sac with an odd shaped lot that doesn't have a backyard would face this.
Okay.
So this does solve it universally for those odd shaped lots where you kind of where you kind of have all side yard and no backyard.
I feel like this is one of those times when, people own their own space and they want to do what they want to do with their own space. And then they have to come to us to get approval of it. And this is one of those times we're kind of helping to fix it along the way that, yeah, we would like you within reason to do what you want to do with your own space, but.
I agree with that, but I just am concerned about coming down the road 2
Unintended
years later and saying, oh, we didn't think about this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that what we need to keep in mind here is that this is kind of unique. Chose to put 2 buildings at the end of a cul-de-sac where typically there's one down the middle and one on each side.
Ended up with this big side
So-
space. That's
yeah.
kind of
So this is, for an odd shaped property, is the only time it fits.
And one of the issues was that it said in the ordinance that you've created your own problem, and that
Yeah.
could be argued against them, and then they'd end up not being able to get this.
there's no
variance.
there's
Yeah.
no
And then we're only giving, it's 5 feet.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
giving,
We're allowing them to build on the
we're
side.
allowing 5
Yeah.
feet.
5'7" if that matters.
it does.
Okay.
Um,
I would move that we approve ordinance 2022-17.
Okay,
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 10, potential land trade sale to Ivory Land Corporation for property located at approximately 2325 South, 1230 West. Now, this we've had a lot of comments on in the last couple of meetings. I think we're all very familiar with it. I will open it up for council discussion. I don't think we need to characterize this. I think we all know what we're talking about.
So I'll start with my thoughts. I've given this a lot of thought, and after reviewing the information, hearing the input from citizens and the Thurgood family, listening to the recommendation, the unanimous recommendation from the planning commission to not move forward with this land sale / swap. I don't think the city's under any legal obligation to do so. I think that's clear. The word integrity has come up a lot. And I think that we as council members, I understand the benefits to the city for changing the shape of the park, a potential future location for a fire department, increased traffic flow. I understand the benefits, but ultimately, I do not think Alma Thurgood would have sold this property to the city without the understanding that this should be utilized as a park. And so that would be my recommendation, is that we honor her by keeping that promise. That's my recommendation.
I would echo generally what you just said. I don't have any. I don't think that this is one of those situations where I think both outcomes would yield a positive benefit, and in 10 years from now, we'd look back and say, "Man, we had a lot of folks riled up. We brought in a lot of angry voices, and in the end, we can end up with, I think just a benefit either way. But at the end of the day, if our citizens don't trust us, which we've had multiple folks, stating that they didn't think we were very competent in what we do, and I know none of us made a promise, none of us individually did, but at the end of the day, Brody is a city manager, and he wears the city manager hat, and it doesn't matter if he was in high school when the city manager made a recommendation or a thought or a comment or anything. But it's looked at as like that is the city manager's role and embodiment, and we're the council, whether we were here 10 years ago or 20 years ago or not. Unfortunately, we represent the city, and I have to stick with that as well.
Well, when this was first brought up, I said, I don't think you can throw a stone without hitting a member of the Thurgood family. And if you don't think you can, you just don't know their maiden name. And that's the truth of all of Thurgood's in Syracuse. And I agree that Elma would likely not have sold this property. And of course, I can't speak for her, but I can hear her family speak for her, that she would have been able to build and develop that land for her own family members had she chosen to. I know she made a decision to give land to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, hoping that they would do something for her legacy. And that didn't work out maybe the way she expected it to, but she also sold her property to Syracuse, expecting that that would serve the majority of the population. And that shows me somebody who can look beyond their own backyard, literally, and think about the good of those people who are to come. I think that it would be a shame if we robbed the city of any parkland in any way. I shouldn't say robbed, that we switched or changed or adjusted it. I think that every ounce of parkland is crucial to our city. I would have loved to have seen our regional park built, and because that was not, we have an obligation to protect so much that is already there. I also don't think that that programmable space is more important than passive space. I think that all of it is important to our city. A lot of people think that the council or the management of the city are developers, and we are not. We are land use authorities. And so when somebody sells their land, they come to us and they ask for a permit to do something more with it. And we have to take into consideration a lot of people, and not just the people that are here, because there was a time when everybody here lived somewhere else, and if you didn't, then your children may. And a lot of us came into somebody's farmland, and they let us live here. Their subdivisions were built because somebody could see that there was value to having homes here. And so I don't regret that we have a constant influx of people wanting to live here. And I don't think that ruins Syracuse in any way. And I think that we have had to make some huge adjustments in the way we view our city and our obligation to future population, whether we want to or not, and we can't lament it. We have to just be a little more proactive about preparing for what's to come, and even if it looks different than it has in the past. But one of the things that we absolutely have to try to do at the same time is balance what came before and what something was intended to be. And I believe that this land should remain the way it was sold. And even if the concept plan that was prepared is not something that we follow through with, because it's a concept, a lot of plans are not verbatim. It's not nailed down. It's a theory of what you'd like to see. But that to me was a concept of what she expected. And it will likely be different than what that looks like, but the lot should remain the same, and it should be an extension of the park. And so that's where I stand.
Jordan.
So I've struggled with this for several weeks, going back and forth on all of this, doing as much research. I'm an engineer. I like facts. I like logic. I like the details. And the question I was asked a lot of times is, what is in a legacy? We were asked this several times in our last meeting, and so I pondered on that a lot the last few weeks. I pondered not just what would be best for Elma and her family, but also on what would be best for all Syracuse citizens who I represent as well, who voted me in. I poured over the concept plan that was shown. And in the end, as was pointed out, the only real delta between the two plans on paper is about 4 homes and about an acre of land. So not a huge delta between the two. I also reviewed all the facts. The land in question was sold at full price. There was no discount given. Now, the motivations I can't speak to, but it was sold using, from what I understand, park money. So whatever happens, it must stay a park. And I absolutely agree with that. The concept was shown and said a park would be built there. Now, I want to say it is a really odd shape for a park, but the concept plan was drawn because that was the land for sale. A friend just recently reminded me that we have lots of odd shapes and inefficient parks in the community.
It's true.
Why not? So I examined the plans, and that have been shown, looked at what potential for both versions of the park could be. So the question is, should I build a park exactly as it's shown in a draft concept drawing, or should I make some modifications to build a potentially better park using different land that has become available as well? The existing park has 5 ponds, which would be difficult to keep filled during drought years. The planned parking lot would require a family to walk almost 130 yards, so longer than a football field, including the goalposts, to reach the back of the park, of the new part, and likely would be seldom used for any pictures or parks. I would love to see someone try and tell a bride she has to walk the length of the football field for a picture.
No.
My wife says she would do it, but again, also it would require a lot of lighting installed in the back section, so expense. And just to be clear, with the current plan, there would be homes adjacent to all of those ponds, which makes me very uncomfortable. So I can't in good conscience recommend the building of this concept drawing or the park as it is shown. Many times traffic has also been mentioned. I spoke with representatives of our first responders, and they recommended that regardless of decision, the road should be connected to Thurgood Lane to allow additional access to the new neighborhood. As you all know, this area is notoriously bad connected. In fact, I challenge any one of you to try and drive between 1,000 and 2,000 without a map and without using Antelope or 2700. This is part of the reason why 1,000 is so busy, because you can't get between the two. It is very poorly designed. So anytime I can improve traffic flow through the city, I will attempt to do so. The updated park will allow for added parking around almost the entire park. I wholeheartedly agree we should keep this as a wedding and photography park. Around the edges, I would want lots of trees, beautiful landscaping, and it can be planned in such a way that it would be much more wider wide. So all this in mind, I'm coming to an end. I have to recommend the city go ahead with the land trade. A better, more accessible park that serves more families and improves traffic flow through the city are a legacy that I can live with.
Jen.
Okay, I'm going to touch on something for a second. I let the mayor and Ms. Lisa know I was going to do some. Gentlemen, please just bear with me. You guys aren't aware of this personal boundary, and I guess a lot of people aren't, so I'm going to make this open. Mr. Paul, is it okay legally if I share on the internet emails that I receive from citizens?
Generally they're public records. If a person's communicating with an elected official, that would be a public record if someone requested it, and yeah, you'd be able to do so.
Thank you, sir. So this was my first experience of public bullying. I didn't run for this job to be bullied into anything. And the people that elected me know that I won't be bullied into anything. For future, if I receive bullying emails from any citizens for any reason that are threatening, I'm going to make sure the rest of the citizens in the city get to see them as well. It's inappropriate and uncalled for. I'm a really nice, genuinely nice person. And I spoke with Mr. Allen, and the whole reason I went to talk to him is because he's the same way. And I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. And none of these people up here did either. We didn't run to be bullied by citizens. We ran to help. And the more we get bullied, the less we feel like we want to help. And it takes us a lot to step outside that. So that's that. Any other one of those, I'm going to just post them. Moving on. We do have to look at the greater good of things. And I spent almost 2 hours with the Thurgoods talking to them. And I did come to the realization and the understanding, there's a lot of Thurgood names all over the land sales, the tradings and all things like that, and to include with the church, sitting in the stake. I'm not really sure what that's called, but when you're the stake representative and stuff. And I really feel like this park had a lot to do with the temple supposed to be, and I know the temple was supposed to come second, that it did come second, but it felt like it was kind of finagled in a way that enticed the temple to be there. Now, that being said, I feel like it's important to look at the greater good. And in doing that, I look to our hired, wait for the punchline.
Can I add a clarifying?
No, hold on.
Okay.
You had, hold on.
It's a chapel in that area.
Okay.
If that helps.
Well, the land behind the, yeah, okay, yeah. So I look to our own experts and not in a way to have them respond per department as individuals who have had experience, because the city can't afford for me to go talk to other experts. They're expensive and we already pay these folks. So I talked to every department and I sent out 5 emails to our first responders and I got 3 back. That's the issue. I like to classify it as extra duties. And they all stated a lot of similar things, but one of the main things was in the way it sits now, like Jordan said, the houses along that west side will in fact provide built-in surveillance for the park itself. I did talk to, when I was at the third grids, about a happy medium. What could be a happy medium? Mr. Allen was against it, but those that live there now were kind of supportive of it. If we kept the park the way it was, my suggestion would be to send Grants Lane through and use that south side of Grants Lane as a parking lot to provide for more parking for the park. But ultimately, I also looked into the evaluation that Ivory Homes sent us, and they are in fact offering over what our appraisal was. And for me, 2 months isn't enough time to raise the appraisal of the amount that they did. And if we vote yes on this and vote into sell that land, then that effectively, this would be the last land sale for that entire subdivision parcel and will effectively change what it costs for each parcel in the entire subdivision to include the other 71 houses. And me being the most low income person on the totem pole here, I am not willing to not be able to let my kid afford a house in Syracuse, because little by little it continually goes up for reasons like this. So for that moral reason, I would say we do not go ahead with the land trade, but move forward with pushing Grants Lane through.
Okay, so I'm just going to say this. I am not going to weigh in on what we should do here or there. I just want to clarify the question. Tonight, the only thing that is on the agenda is, should we do the land trade / sale or not?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Oh, just a minute. I just want to be prepared that that's the only part of the decision that is being rendered tonight, that if this remains parkland, that will be a future discussion as to how to utilize that. That's not being decided tonight. And if it is not, then there's still an application that goes through. So I'm just saying that tonight, the question is the land trade or not, and I will take a motion, and I'm not weighing in on either side.
I move that we decline or vote against the potential land trade or sale to Ivory Land Corporation for property located at approximately 2325 South 1230 West.
I second.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that is 4-1. The land trade does not go through. We will move on to the next item. Item number 11, continued discussion of the Good Landlord Program versus the Crime-Free Housing Program. We'll discuss which one is more beneficial to the city and which one we'll enter into. Who's going to be, Brody, will you begin with this? And thank you for preparing upon request some comparative to make it easier for us to all understand what's included in one versus the other.
Sure. And I'd like to thank Paul for doing that, helping out with that. So what we wanted to do is further that discussion that we had at the previous meeting, and the memo from the previous meetings also included. The new information just kind of gives you a side-by-side comparison, because the actual administration of the program really wasn't totally vetted out at the last meeting. So we wanted to give you some further information on what it would take to start and what it would take to continue each of those 2 programs. The only change after chatting with Chief Atkin is down on that checklist there between, or down on like the 13th and 14th line, where it says the police assist in serving trespass notices. There should probably be a checkbox on the crime-free housing program as well. And then also the one just underneath it that says may require background checks for potential tenants, that would also be possible on the crime-free housing. So, from a financial perspective, solely on a financial perspective, not looking at the benefits yet of each of those two, setting up the crime-free housing program is easier to set up and in the long run, probably less burdensome administratively. The Good Landlord program has a lot more administrative overhead that's required, although there is some revenue attached to it. But it certainly, under our estimates, we don't think it would cover the full cost of the program. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that as you make your decisions on which one we should go for.
Okay, council, I'll open it up for discussion amongst yourselves as to which ones you see different.
So one of the things, and I've been a proponent early on for some version of this as we change the dynamic of our city. But one of the things that struck me as I was talking to Chief Atkin last meeting was just the fact that, when we're talking about the resource of our law enforcement in our community, that's a finite resource, and we're challenged to fund that appropriately all the time, right? And we're always looking for ways to expand our public safety capacities. And even a slight ability to outsource this out to a professional, organization that does that seems to, at least in that small extent, give them a little bit more flexibility. And so I think in that regard, the Good Landlord program would make some sense from a capacity and constraint standpoint. And when we're talking about DARE, we're talking about all these other things that we can't do. It just makes it a little bit, although, I appreciate everything they do. I just don't want to put you into the, being our badge wearing good landlords, as much as possible. I think there's already a lot of efforts and intersections that they already, take on as far as that goes in law enforcement in those settings. But if we can reduce that even a slight bit, outsource it, I think it makes a little more sense to me, even at a cost.
And I think the crime-free multi-housing program is obviously more geared towards larger multifamily complexes, where the Good Landlord program, which was initiated essentially by the Utah Apartment Association, it has a lot of good education for smaller landlords as well. There's a missing check mark. There's a 100-page resource manual given to landlords. The Good Landlord program also has a landlord reference guide. It's a pretty hefty landlord reference guide that's given to landlords as part of that as well. So I think that I'm very familiar with that program. I think it is, like Seth saying, it relies a lot less on city resources to keep that the Good Landlord program going.
Others?
For me, this is more about scope. I don't break the chair. You broke it last time. This is about scope. The Good Lord the crime-free multi-housing program will be fairly limited in scope, as has been pointed out. It'll primarily just apply to our large apartments along Antelope. The Good Landlord program will apply to every single rental in the city. At least they'll have the opportunity. But it also gives us awareness as a city where those rentals are. I've recently heard that we had an entire neighborhood become rentals, and they have we have no jurisdiction over that. They can do basically whatever they want. And I think this Good Landlord program provides the training, but it also provides a little bit of teeth if you're not carrying through with what you agreed to in your business license. You can lose your business license to have rentals in the city. And I think that's the teeth that really helps protect our citizens and hopefully keeps our police working less in these areas. Not to say that I think renters are any less awesome than the rest of our citizens, but at the same time, this just allows us to have the ability to remove problems if they arise. And so I actually think the Good Landlord Program, with its expanded scope and additional training resources, is probably a better bet for the city and will serve us better.
Better, it costs a lot more.
Yeah, it does.
It
costs a lot to start up, but
It still costs a lot more, even with the $10,000 question mark after estimated revenue, that's still $10,000 in compared to the 500, but it
You're right.
gives a lot more. So it's kind of honestly for what
You get what you pay
paying,
for.
You get what you pay for on either one of these. If you want to do the budget friendly, it's going to give you the budget friendly. If you want to do that extra out of pocket, it's going to give you the extra what you paid for. So how much safety do you want? With how much? That's the way I see it. Like honestly, that's what it is. Like
I want,
me too.
yeah.
Okay, so let's, Lisa, you,
I like feeling safe. Personal safety is a good deal.
okay.
I was looking at the possibility of having a study done to see if there's a disproportionate amount of impact and if we're spending more time. But I think that's something we can figure out on our own without putting the money into any kind of an impact fee study. Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe there's more value to this, but I do think that if we implement this, we will know soon how much more time, or if there is any more time being spent in these rental areas as opposed to not. And that would impact the fee that they're giving. But I think that when we've talked about being proactive about things several times and not waiting until the problem is at our door. And when we were discussing having this increased housing, we said one of the things that would help offset that worry for a lot of neighbors is to have a program in place. And so my thought is, if we have areas and swaths of areas in the city that are not apartments or townhomes, but are actually just single family homes being rented out in mass, I think this is something we should definitely be proactive about tracking that and seeing what's going on and having some kind of teeth in there. So I don't think that we need to fund the study at this time. I think that we'll figure out.
Lisa, I think the study is required.
Because it's part of the.
It's, you have to be able to, I think you have to be able to, Paul, you can correct me. I think you have to be able to show that there's a disproportionate impact from.
So it says you're allowed to impose the fee, right? So, well, this is the Good Landlord Programs. It says, in addition, cities are allowed to impose a rental fee. So I don't think you have to do that unless you want to.
But it's a voluntary program, which we want people to participate in. So I think the waiving of saying, hey, there is a fee for a rental dwelling license, but it's waived or lessened if you participate in the Good Landlord Program. I think we have to have that.
Do we?
I think we have.
Okay.
Okay, so,
That's why I said, correct me if I'm wrong. So thank
all
you.
right, so let me jump in here. The scope of tonight's question is, should we pursue good landlord or crime-free? So I'm going to.
But I think that's part of the question that Lisa's posing is, could we proceed with Good Landlord without the study?
Okay, so what I'm going to say is, I'm hearing that we want to continue to investigate good landlord over crime-free, and that we'll take this to a future work session to iron out exactly what we need to do to implement it.
Yes.
Okay. And now we're about 2 hours in, so I'm going to declare us in recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
I know.
Know what that means.
I'm going to bring us back together and reconvene. Our next item is continued discussion regarding general plan moderate income housing elements in compliance with Utah House Bill 462. Is this you, Paul? Or Brody?
Or me.
I think we got Noah on this one.
Okay.
You need me as a hot potato.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so as Paul explained last time, with the changes in 2022, we've got an expanded list. We have to pick 3 items. I added the list. Also, there's a requirement to add a water use and preservation element, and then include an implementation timeline for each strategy. So the purpose here is to just give Planning Commission some direction, and then they'll work on this and they'll send it back to you. So looking at I just kind of pulled out the ones that we had been talking about, and some of them can be ongoing strategies as well. It doesn't always have to be a new strategy. One thing we talked about is for detached accessory dwellings, we could waive the impact fees for those, since when the home was built, they paid a lot of impact fees. So that's probably one we could pick up from the last time talking about. Another one, it says amend land use regulations to eliminate or reduce parking requirements for residential development. And we've actually done this a little bit in some of our newer zones where we don't require a garage, but for the most part, in all of our zones, we require a minimum 2-car garage, which it's been a couple of years, but Habitat for Humanity was looking out here and they saw that requirement, and they just said that they couldn't work around that, because on their homes, when they try to build an affordable home, they don't build a garage, and then they give them a tough shed in their backyard, and then they kind of design into their footprint some storage areas. And so that's one element that really inflates the cost of a home, just to have the garage requirement. I think most of the new homes will have a 3-car garage anyway, but that would be an attainable goal. And then rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. We have in our general plan, we have lots of areas where potentially some more higher density homes could come in with future zone changes and things like that. So there's your 3, if you guys were okay with those, or we could talk about other ones.
Okay, so the first request was, are there ones that we seem to have started already? So, or are there any that are in progress at this time that you can report?
That we can.
Yeah, so we've created this mixed use. So F, we've created a mixed use ordinance that's intended to be built kind of along with potential commercial. We don't have to commit to any specific one, but the fact that it's still on the books and it's available in the general plan indicates that there could be a possibility that we'll entertain that again in the future.
So I do think that, yes, that one's in progress and we could report that it's ongoing. But again, that's the first part is, and I think it would be wise, though it's up to council, if we were to make sure that whatever we pick is something that isn't going to be just a one quick fix, because they're going to ask us to keep adding to this. So we better have some things that are in progress.
We don't want to be overachievers again.
I guess my question is, if you've already achieved something on the list, do you not get credit for it anymore?
think we have to add more, isn't that right?
That's what they basically said, is it doesn't count if you already
So
accomplished.
what I'm hearing, never finish any of these.
Yep.
They've got to, I mean, every year we have to write a report, and I think we could definitely keep tooting our horn on some of those things. There's a guy and he's looking at it as a checklist of, are we compliant with the state ordinance? I maybe Paul has a better understanding, but there, from my experience in the last couple annual reports, we can say things are ongoing or things that we did are still affecting our ability to be in compliance with the ordinance.
Reporting the same ones.
Yeah, the new requirement's going to have, it requires like an implementation plan. And so what they're going to be looking for is, how are we doing over the next 2 or 3 years, right? They'll be looking, are we making progress? That's what they're going to be looking at. And not just us, but all the cities in the state.
Right.
So, or that have to submit this. So, if we do one, we've accomplished it, they will have seen it, but the following year, we have to continue with the progress.
Yeah.
So,
But if our implementation plan says in 2018, we, or something, I would have to assume that that's not going to be adequate.
I would think you could include it if you're still working on it. But if
like MXD, that's.
But if we choose something like
ongoing.
eliminate impact fees for an accessory dwelling unit, like that's
done.
And check, and now we've got to add,
We've got to do a new one.
we got to replace it.
So
Yeah.
first year we reduce them. Second year we reduce them more.
No, we could just say, yep, we're still not charging impact fees for the internal accessory. That's ongoing.
Yeah, we didn't see any jump in ADUs being built, and so we lowered them further.
I think we just go with the first three that we already identified, the A, B, and F, and those are ongoing things that we're working through. And we just did a rezone for some slightly higher density. We've also demonstrated investment in rehabilitation in infrastructure that facilitates the construction of moderate income housing. We're looking at building some additional roads and things like that. And zone or rezone for higher density, we just did that too. So I mean, we're doing that.
So I will say, based on the history of the reporting on this, and it has changed under this new ordinance, but based on the history, a lot of it is still vague. It's more of a gesture. I mean, you got to comply with it, but it's more of there's a lot still that we don't know of how they want us to implement. So what they're looking for is they want to see if the cities are, doing a good faith effort to try to at least accommodate affordable housing.
right. And for perfect clarity, what happens if you don't do any of these?
There are several funding sources that we would not be eligible for. There's some transportation funding and some other grants
Right.
that we'd be completely ineligible for. And then, there's also the ripple effect of if enough cities don't do anything, then the state may take more drastic measures.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
What is the definition for our affordable housing?
Ooh.
So moderate income
Well,
housing.
Affordable housing, it says moderate income.
Okay, but what is our standard? That's what we consider affordable.
They generally, so they look at the median income of the county that you're in, so that the county area, and then they apply a percentage. So anything 80% or below of the median for the county is considered moderate income.
So you've just touched on something that's one of my pet peeves in the whole analysis process, because it is a continual moving target. Because they base the definition of what Syracuse is affordable is on the surrounding cities' numbers, we have no control over what they define.
But they're not doing valuations.
I thought we were supposed to consider 1/3 of income, right? So it goes towards housing. Is that an overall, like they say?
Their definition is, and this is the problem, we are considered a little bit slightly more affluent than some of our surrounding communities, say Clearfield. So because their definition of an affordable house is far lower, we are always working against that difficult measurement because our border cities have a lower definition of what affordable is. Yeah, it's a moving target. This is a tough one.
And this is where I don't think they're going in and saying, okay, you built these apartments. How much are you charging for rent?
Exactly.
So they're not going to that level. This is still just what can you do to make it better?
What can you say you do?
Well, and we do know that it's cheaper to rent an apartment or a townhome than it is to buy a home, right? So we know that this is more affordable, but it's always up for, it's subjective.
Like you said, a moving target, I guess
It is.
depends on what the target is or what at that time people are buying homes for.
Every year it's different.
With their mortgage rates and everything compared to what you're paying for rent. So it's.
And interest has just gone up enormously.
I just don't know if we can, I don't know if we can change any of that. I mean,
We can't.
I get
That's-
that it's,
So this is like you have to show that you're making a good faith effort, but actually hitting the target, they won't even be sure.
Yeah.
Because it's an ever moving target. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you completed it. Well, what'd you compare it
I recommend we move forward with A, B, and F.
Okay.
to? Was that the question?
Do I have, this is not a motion for a vote, but do we have anybody else that agrees?
are we back to, so it's direction to
Yeah.
the planning commission for, ABF plus.
No, don't go beyond.
No, I'm saying, look at ABF and decide if.
Okay, so
or other-
I'm going to say we have a general consensus. I'm going to have a,
Okay, stop, I'm sorry.
I'm going to conclude that we have a general consensus to recommend planning commission start with A, B, and F. And we'll go on from there since this is not a concluding item. Item
Okay.
14 or 13, discussion of continued discussion of budget in preparation for truth and taxation process.
So just an open item right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think more recently, we saw some information about elected salaries.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to bring that forward. Well, I didn't recommend it, but I seconded it or supported it as far as a discussion item. So feel free to jump in, Lisa, if you have other thoughts.
Open public.
It's-
views. I feel like
yeah.
it just popped out there and I wasn't aware that anybody was looking into that. I don't think a few of us were, so it just kind of showed up. And in the interest of keeping things public, we got to talk about this.
So let me just say this. This is my primary concern here. All actual numbers aside, the way to run a successful business, at least with many of the mentors that I subscribe to, Jim Collins of Good to Great, Robert Kiyosaki, Stephen Covey, they talk about a successful business being find good policy and then follow it. If you want to really mess things up, a great example is the federal government. And when you start with a policy and you continually make exceptions to the policy, you get the IRS. That is the thing I don't want to do as a model for management is say everything takes an exception. There are no hard and fast rules. The easiest way for people to appreciate what is if it follows fairly reasonable policy standards. So we came up with a policy not knowing how the numbers would be affected by any of the positions. And so to me, the question is, was the policy flawed? And if it's not, then we go forward. If it is, then we need to reevaluate whether we set up a flawed policy.
So this was done the same way all the other employees.
Yes, every other employee in the city,
It's just straight across the board.
without anybody talking about specifics.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with the idea that we need to be policy driven, stick to the policy. I just think that for me, it was more about, I didn't know. And I would argue at least a handful of us were not aware that that was what we were doing or that it was applicable to everybody across the board, including elected officials. And so I have no issue with the amount. I have no issue with any of that. I just think in full transparency, it should have been an open discussion. And so that was where I was kind of taking a little bit of umbrage to it. I was like, okay, where did this come from? And then, as I've had further discussions, it's like, well, this was done in the past, or this was something we thought about in the past and it was implemented, but it was before your time. It's like, well, okay, that doesn't really help me because,
Yeah, I think your arguments are perfectly valid. But yeah, the big thing is, this happened 3 years ago. I think the only people that were in that conversation were Lisa, myself, and Dave. And at that time, we had decided that it would just, city council would follow the same policy as everybody else. And so, yeah, I kind of knew it would be in there, but I didn't want to try and single anybody out, just follow the same thing for everybody. So we probably could have pointed out.
I think as it's codified and we all talk about it, it all obviously have to be, reintegrated each year as we go over the budget with new turnover and everything. But I think it's pretty standard. There's even discussions like, oh, do we change the averages and add different cities and do different things? And Steve was great to, give us different analyses and everything. But I don't think any of that needs to happen. I
agree. I think you set a policy and you apply it across the board. I didn't realize it applied to city council and mayor either, but I'm not a career politician. And I think the hesitancy is to say, well, I don't want to vote for something that's increasing my salary, but I also want to, in the future, attract good candidates to city council and mayor. And I think the policy will help do that.
Because to be fair, what we're making now, I assure you, no, it's not worth it.
Well, so Jordan referenced that before we said that we would just abide by the same policy that we make for everybody else. And I can just attest that before that, there was real nitpicky discussions about how you should treat every position differently. And that led to resentment amongst employees and staff positions. And I'm not saying that that has any of the same effect here, except for it leads us to a point where you say, let's make good policy and just stick to it.
Yeah.
And not, because as soon as you start making exceptions to the policy, and if you want to make exception to this policy, fine, that's not going to be my fight. My fight is, did we make a good policy? Did we make a policy that applies to everybody? If we did,
they're happy.
The reason,
They're always happy. They're like,
and the reason I brought it up is because I do think, even though we discussed this a few years ago, this was the time that we changed our benchmark to be the above average. And where we used to say it was 60 percentile or around there. And so I was unaware that we had bumped anything or changed anything according from what we had in the past. And I would like there to be full transparency. I also think that it's possible to have a different policy for elected officials than you have for staff. One of my issues was bringing Layton into the mix. Their city council, their police are doing, I would say the majority of their staff are doing similar work to ours, but their city officials have a much larger scope of responsibilities, I believe, than we do. Even though we're making similar decisions, we're still, the scope is much more grand.
So can you expand on that? What are they doing that we're not?
Well, I just think
I
that,
don't necessarily disagree with you.
Yeah.
higher too. That pay is way higher. Than what
I'm not saying.
that's why I said it kind of threw us out. Once we added Layton in, their number was much higher. What they make, that's why I say their scope is different.
Population.
Yeah.
So they probably take a lot more abuse, honestly.
Yeah.
Which is, they get paid.
They should get paid for more for the abuse.
And
So-
That's why I just wanted to discuss it and
So-
say, is that fair for us to include them? Or do we feel that is our job description just different enough from Layton's and the amount and the scope that it merits us decreasing or maybe removing them from our benchmark?
I put in
That's up for
32 hours this
discussion.
last week just for city council.
okay,
How much-
so let's just make a couple of comparisons. Right now, Syracuse is the third largest city in the county. Of our comparative cities that we compare against, we're the second largest. So one of those, Layton is the only one larger. We're actually bigger than Clearfield technically, and Bountiful is bigger than we are. But we don't compare to Bountiful because we kind of consider it So all of our other wages don't compare to that either. And they actually, in some cases, pay a lot more than Layton. They're not a comparison. But the point being is that the policy for all staff is to average the top 3 of our comparison cities. If you take the top 3, we are actually the second, and we're averaging amongst the 3. And the second and third are fairly close to each other, so they're almost the same.
I'd say one of the issues is that they can pilfer from our staff, whereas they can't pilfer for an
that's
elected
true.
And that's
official.
a valid.
That is true. We're
That's-
not
that's
all
one
going
of
to
the
run in
reasons
another
We're trying to
city.
compete, right?
Well, I
like
mean,
they
they used
said,
to,
like-
but we've done a pretty big
Yeah.
jump to where.
But at the same time, you want to keep
No.
this job like appealing to people who want to make a difference. And I know a lot of it is, well, when you run, you want to make a difference. Well, we do, but we don't want to take abuse and we don't want to get, like, we spend a lot of time focusing on, of our lives, focusing on the issues in the city. In almost some aspect, in some cases, like the Thurgood property, it almost felt like I did more of that than my daily job. And it's,
Well, and it is a 7 days a week.
yeah, it is.
I have not had a day that I didn't deal with city issues for many months, and that's okay. I signed up for it. I know what I'm into.
So, Dave,
But-
I was just gonna say, I think in regards to like, if like, this is the discussion I was hoping to have, and if we've decided that, the policy counts and is good and everything, I think we just move forward and encapsulated in the budget we're putting forward here in the truth and taxation. But if there is like concern about the latent thing, obviously we would need to have further discussion, it sounds like, and review and recommend a policy. I personally do not think that makes sense to me. I think that's the reason you get a peer group of averages and you pull in and get that, you have some high, some low, and we happen to be in the middle. And so that makes sense to me. I'm okay with the policy. I just wanted to have the discussion.
I agree with Seth. It's an important discussion to have
Okay,
open.
so in regard to truth and taxation, which we have to prepare for next month,
Mhm.
are we suggesting an adjustment or not?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, it's already covered, right? I mean,
Right.
what we were.
We
sent out is-
continue with the policy that we have implemented and that's in the budget. Is that the consensus?
It's probably the consensus, but I would say I'm probably an outlier because I would say that that it either Layton needs to be removed from that, in my opinion, or that we have a separate policy for elected officials.
I just, I don't, maybe I shouldn't even say anything because as far as like debating whether that as, yeah, maybe.
Well, and if the rest of you feel otherwise, that's.
I don't know. I guess I would like to.
I just don't know how to do that without
I
changing
think-
policy.
To me,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think the policy either applies or we rework the policy.
The alternative to me is if we take it out for city council, you take it out for everybody. Because we've decided for some reason it's an outlier. If it's not an outlier, then it shouldn't be taken out for any.
I just think elected officials are different than staff. Once again, it comes down to, can they be pilfered? Yes, and so we have a vested interest in making sure that they're happy here. I don't think anybody would run for a position, an elected position for the money. I mean, I just can't imagine
No,
that.
Not on this
Nobody
level.
does.
Not at this,
Not
yeah,
on this
and,
level.
and I think that it wouldn't be a deterrent because I think that there are some exceptional people that serve in public office that hasn't been a deterrent thus far. And I also think that elected officials, we could my thought would be to have a policy that's based on the average rather than the top 3.
It is average of the top 3 is the,
She said the
It's average of all of the
Of
ones that
all.
we look at. So I would suggest, and that kind of used to be what our benchmark was, where it was based on 60 percentile,
of the average of all.
the
Yeah.
average of all.
I think a policy across the board like we have now is.
Okay, so I have one vote for policy across the board. Jordan?
I like the idea of having a policy that applies to everyone. I agree that right now we don't allow for outliers. I wouldn't mind if we added an outliers clause. If one city is drastically different, we have the ability to throw it out, but that's not in the policy right now. So I prefer to move forward as we are, but I do think we ought to look at adding an option for throwing out outliers.
Okay, Lisa, you've expressed you wouldn't go. Seth,
I would leave it as is.
Paul?
I would leave the policy as is.
Okay, so by a majority consensus, we're going to go forward as is. Now I will move on to public comment.
Mayor,
Yeah,
if we could just address the truth and taxation presentation stuff.
okay. That was for truth and taxation. Is there more that we need to deal with? Because
Yeah,
we said we scheduled the hearing already. We've set forth the budget that we've gone for, unless somebody has another issue to bring up for change in truth and taxation.
The agenda item goes over the presentation that we would like to have presented that Brody's usually puts together. Is that what you want to discuss, Brody?
Yeah, that was what we had in the memo to, if there's any other points that you want made in the presentation, now's the time to
be fair, I go ahead, but to be fair, we did talk about that before of what you wanted to put in that. So unless somebody's got an alteration to that.
I thought what you presented in the years past, looks like you're hitting all those same points.
But in our budget review, we talked about the specific positions that had a change that were equal to the amount that we were making the adjustment for. So that would be the focal point of the presentation, is why and what's in, correct? So is there?
So on the chart that does
Yeah.
come in that has the comparison rates.
Yeah.
That you typically, I think that's super helpful. Will that, I forget, does that include the proposed truth and taxation hearings that are held as well? Or is it, I just can't recall exactly.
For adjacent cities that you're talking
Yeah,
about?
that always helps.
Are you saying on the tax rates?
Yeah.
We can do that. What we've had in the past is a note on the bottom that lists the cities that are having a truth and taxation hearing, because
Till it's passed.
they may not actually vote for the amount advertised.
That's true.
So, but we do list the ones that are considering doing that.
And I think that's appropriate still.
Hi, Steve. You got something for us?
Nope, I'm just here to smile.
Just hanging out.
And you're
Okay.
doing well. Thank you,
Doing
sir.
a good job, Mr. Steve.
Yeah, I think you cover all the points I'd like you to cover in that presentation.
So Brody, on the one thing, that was nitpicky. When we do present it, in the years past, I think it's like, you compare it to an average cell phone bill or a cable bill. I think times have changed a little bit. So if we could find even something that's more hits home, I don't know if it's like a Utopia bill, I guess, or something, a Netflix bill, a Netflix, a streaming service, the average streaming account, or something. Just
we do have the last one included both like a cable bill and a streaming service bill.
Okay.
To be clear, we have a work session between now and the truth and taxation hearing. And my expectation is we would have a mock presentation for what that's going to be so that we would get final approval to the city council in that meeting. Is that okay with everybody?
I want to say one more thing.
Go ahead. Please.
As we've been talking about it, where we put I think it is educational. So where you have an asterisk of which cities are holding a truth and taxation, I do think it's worthwhile to put an additional column there that says if they approve the full amount, which oftentimes that's the way things tend to go, where would that fall?
Or where they would be. Yeah, we can add that in.
Yeah, we could add a stacked graph that shows current and then if proposed went into effect.
One thing I did note when I reviewed the proposal for the whole county is that a lot of the people having a truth and taxation hearing where their percentage may be slightly lower than ours, the actual amount is much higher because it's just that they have much higher property values. So it kind of drives down the percent that they're changing. So like 28% in Clearfield is actually more than 30% in Syracuse.
Saying in percentage and dollars or something.
Well, it's a relative thing that we have to kind of point out that it may sound like it's a smaller percentage, but it actually might be a higher dollar amount relative to the area.
Good luck presenting all this information in a way that makes sense.
And we'll review it in our work session end of the month.
Thank you for your time on this, Brody.
Brains explode.
Okay, so let's move on to public comment. And we do have a public comment period at the end of all of our work sessions. Another opportunity for people to comment up to 3 minutes. Same rules apply as at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to comment?
I just publicly want to say thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment. At this time, I'm going to skip forward to item number 16 because we are going to consider a closed session tonight. We have a couple of land issue requests that have to be done in closed session. So let's start with you tonight, Jen.
Sweet.
All right.
So with the emergency, I just put candy in my mouth. Sorry. Thanks again, Miss Lisa. The emergency preparedness grant, the emergency management performance grant that Detective Ben thought was going to be probably around $5,000. We got approved for $21,000 for the EOC. The museum is still waiting on to hear about a grant they applied for.
It's the mural grant.
Yeah, for the mural, yes. I talked, this isn't part of my stuff, but the public works, I talked to them and the water system is running better than it ever has, ever. So I think that's pretty cool to mention. And also on a personal note, I think apologies should be way louder than your disrespect was. And this taught me that I was been very disrespectful to somebody. So Mr. Brad Mills, sorry for being angry about irrigation water.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can all be better people, right?
Absolutely. As anyone going to the dump may have noticed, the fees have now moved to their new rates. So you are now going to pay $10 for a load to the dump. So just want to make sure that was out there, that it has gone up. Inflation is real. And yeah. And also on a personal note, the James Webb Space Telescope released its first photos and they are freaking awesome. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa.
We had a discussion as the West Davis Chamber about doing a couple of events every year rather than just doing monthly meetings that are not as well attended as we'd like. And so one of the things we wanted to bring to your attention is that we're going to do kind of a job fair for the high school kids and connect them to Syracuse City businesses. So we're meeting with the district about that, and we'll connect with several cities in this area, but it will probably be held here in our city. So just wanted to make you aware of that. That will be next February. And then also straight out of Syracuse on social media is hosting a gathering here on Thursday at 6 o'clock at Centennial Park. Anybody who loves or knows or lives in Syracuse is welcome to come and just visit with everybody. It's kind of a social gathering. And then Shrek is going to be coming. Is that on the 14th? Is that? No,
It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday matinee. I was going to announce that as well.
Oh, good.
But
I'll let you.
No, go ahead.
You go ahead and do
got it.
that. And then I would like to request, Jordan, I actually heard you say that and I thought of this. I'd like some drought updates. Can we do that and have Robert do that every, I don't know, Mayor, when can you request that?
We're going to do that.
Water usage updates.
Water usage updates would be great. Yes, updates.
So the
So,
Utopia, okay, well, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
I think that's it.
No personal thought?
Nothing comes to mind. Too
So-
much pressure.
So this last week, we had the Parents Empowered campaign kickoff. I appreciate the support from the city and from the vehicles that are metals that are magnetic, because Fords are aluminum bodies and don't hold a magnet, unfortunately.
I actually knew that.
Yeah.
Think of it though.
But so the campaign's kicking off. You'll see our vehicles out in the community, and we just love the support there from our law enforcement, public works, and fire, and everybody else. The CTC is actually going to start providing probably a monthly or bi-monthly little blurb in the Connections magazine about upcoming events, and so you can find out about more details about illumination. There's already an ad already in the magazine about illumination, and we're all pretty familiar with it. But just for those listening, you can learn about what illumination will include and who's going to be performing and all that good stuff. And so that's as much as I have about CTC. And then on Youth Council, Just wanted to know when, or just to plug it again, that we'll need to be back on the agenda pretty quick.
Yes,
I've had,
that'll be in the work session.
okay, perfect.
It's on the agenda.
So I've had 4 or 5 youth already approach me about interest in participating. So I think it's anybody else who has, feelers out in the community, please plug that and let them know how important it is and the engagement and how beneficial it is for them and us. So nothing personal. That's all I have.
Okay, on the youth council, we may need some of your input getting ready for the next agenda on that.
Okay. So is that on the 26th?
Oh, because that's the one you're not going to be here.
I don't know.
And yet I don't want to put it off either because.
Yeah, we probably, so the next one will be held, the next work session would be after school starts.
Yeah, so I think we may have to go ahead without you.
Yeah, I can give information. That's
Okay.
Yep.
Paul.
I don't have any updates. We took a break from planning commission last week, so that was good. But no.
You have 2 new members as of tonight to swear in at the next meeting.
Awesome. That'll be good.
And note that one was online and the other was excused from an assignment that he was filling for the last time because he's now changed assignments so that he can be a part of the planning commission. So yeah,
Awesome.
I'm excited to see them both. Okay. I was just going to, mention Shrek, which you've already heard, Thursday, Friday, Saturday matinee. This is going to be a really fun show. You should come out. The cast has really been a lot of fun to see together. So I would highly recommend it if you have chance to go to one of those shows. Saturday's always the one that's tough to get in Saturday night, but come and see the community. It's mostly made up of community members. So we are really encourage that. Now I will take a motion for us to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are headed to closed session
Bye, best friend.
in 5 minutes.